This is going to be a fun video. Today, I'm going to rank different cities in California and tell you why you should definitely move there and live there if you can, or whether you should completely avoid them and just take them off of your list, because some of these places do need to go, like they are not that nice to live in. In this ranking, I'm going to be using 5 factors to determine how good the city is. Basically, one, we have ghetto, as in how much crime is there. Next, we have nightlife, which is basically what is there to do around there. Is it boring? Is it fun? Are there a lot of young people? And then we have prettiness, which is just its natural beauty and like weather. Then we have jobs and economics, which is the jobs that are available there and like their salaries and just how much is going on there. And then we have cost of living, which is how expensive is it to live there. So all of these factors are going to determine how the city ranks. I have like horrible choice, meh choice, decent choice, solid choice, and best choice on here. So basically, I'm just going to be going into it with my honest opinion. I'm not going to be favoring cities and saying that California is great everywhere, because it's not. At the same time, I'm not going to be completely shitting on California the way a lot of southern states like to do, or Republicans, where they say it's just a shithole everywhere, because that's not the truth either. So I'm just going to be ranking them. Yeah. We are going to start off with some of the smaller cities that people maybe don't know as much about. So I'm going to go ahead and start with, I think this is Berkeley. All right. First of all, in terms of ghetto, I mean, I've seen a lot of tents and stuff, and like people kind of like on the sides of the roads in some of the less nicer parts of Berkeley, specifically when you're getting like near Oakland, I'd say. But overall, Berkeley is a pretty clean and safe city, and it's actually pretty expensive, which will get us into the next part, which is cost. It is a pretty expensive place to live. The average house here, as of like 2024, is worth about $1.52 billion, and it goes for about $2,232 a month in rent. Now, like if I pull up these houses here, you can see that many of them are well over 1 million, but actually there are a few places that are like a little cheaper than that. So the prices are obviously extremely high. Most people, I'd say, would not be able to afford places like this, or to just like buy them out completely. They are big houses, which is an important thing to consider, because in other cities that we're going to look at, you can spend this much money on a house, but the house itself will actually be way smaller. Whereas in Berkeley, you are spending $2 million here, for example, in this house, but it has 7 bedrooms and 6 bathrooms. So some of these houses are just pretty big. I recognize that to other states, this is pretty expensive. And even in California, it is pretty pricey, but there are definitely places that go way higher than this. So in terms of cost of living, Berkeley would rank pretty low. Low meaning that it's pretty expensive, but not. There really isn't much to do for young people in Berkeley. I'd say it's a pretty career sort of oriented city. A lot of the people that are around there like sort of have to do with the university, UC Berkeley. That's mainly what it's known for, and it has a very college vibe, the city, UC Berkeley, and I feel like a lot of people go there for jobs and that sort of thing. So there isn't really that much to do, in my opinion, though they do have the mall Bay Street, which is pretty cool, but that's in Emeryville, which is in part of Berkeley. So if you do want to go there, it's a pretty fun place to go. But other than that, there really is not much to do in Berkeley. There are places that have a way better fun factor, nightlife factor, things to do. So Berkeley, if you're like in your 20s, you'll probably be bored if you're into sort of meeting people. And I would give it a like 3 out of 10 in terms of things to do, Berkeley. So not that fun. And then we're going to get into pretty. Berkeley is honestly not that pretty. They don't have a lot of natural scenery incorporated in their city, as far as I've seen. Most of it is just regular old buildings and just infrastructure. They do have a few probably like nice places you can go to, but it's not naturistic. So if that's what you're into, I wouldn't live here. Because Berkeley is in Silicon Valley in the Bay Area, there are a lot of jobs related to tech that are probably available there. But on its own, Berkeley is not necessarily. A lot of people who live in Berkeley don't really work there. If they are working in the tech jobs, most will work in San Francisco, and in Berkeley, the average salary is about $70,000. So it's not as high as in other places in California, but it is still pretty high compared to, I mean, It's not that bad. I would say that's average, honestly, in the country, making $70,000 a year of the job. So a lot of people will live in Berkeley because they work somewhere like in San Francisco, for example. Berkeley comes out to be a 5 out of 10, putting it on a decent choice to live in. Oh, here. All right, next we have Coachella, which actually ranks pretty high on the list. Now, Coachella is actually where my uncle lives, and in terms of the ghetto part, it ranks pretty high actually because there's not a lot of crime in this area. And honestly, like I've spent a lot of time there, like sleeping over at my uncle's house with my cousins and my aunt, and I've never felt like I was in danger. And then in terms of job/economy, honestly, Coachella is not great when it comes to this, at least compared to the rest of California. The average income in Coachella is actually below the US average, being $30,000 per person, or per household around like 60K, I think. So it's not very high in Coachella. It's pretty low actually. But obviously, in terms of like comparing jobs to the rest of the country, we do have a higher minimum wage in California, if that matters. So everyone working in fast food, for example, will make at minimum $20 an hour. So that's pretty good for some people. Like if you, are coming from a different state, that's probably higher than the average minimum wage in other states. In terms of things to do, there isn't that much to do in Coachella. Next, the cost of living. It is really good in Coachella compared to the rest of California. Now, look at this. Here you can have a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house for less than 600 grand. That is honestly insane. But there are pretty places, like you're in Coachella Valley, you can go see like some of these sort of like ranges, things like that. With all of that, Coachella would come in at a 6 out of 10, I would rank it, and this would put it at, I would say this puts it at a pretty solid choice. Next, we're gonna move on to Santa Barbara. Barbara is pretty high ranking on the ghetto factor because there isn't a lot of crime. It's less than the national average. Job/economy, I'm gonna say Santa Barbara's economy and job space is pretty good. The average person in Santa Barbara brings in way more than the national average, so that's a pretty good factor to consider. Now, in terms of things to do, Santa Barbara has like a few downtown market areas, things like that, but I wouldn't rank it very high in terms of like nightlife or fun or anything like that because, I mean, even though it's near LA, it's really not a major city on its own. You can look at like a lot of these old missions and the beautiful Spanish architecture, and it's probably good for more people who are older, but if you're young, I'd say you'd be pretty bored here. It's mainly for older people, I would say, but in terms of their cost of living, they'll rank actually a lot lower because it's very expensive to live here. As you can see, a lot of these houses are well over $1 million, and I mean, some of them are really nice, there's beautiful places, $1 million, 4 bedrooms, 4.5 bathrooms, but the average house here is going to cost about $2 million, and the rent, I would say, is about like $3,000, but it is pretty reasonable for California. And then in terms of beauty, Santa Barbara is incredibly beautiful. You have a lot of just natural scenery within the city, like putting it with a solid choice. It's just really beautiful. Moving on to the fun one, Oakland, California. Now this place, honestly, if we're ranking it in terms of ghetto, I can't even lie to you. This place is really, really ghetto, and it's not just a few parts, it's most of it. Now, some areas in Oakland are beautiful, and this is not the entire city. I don't want people to get the view of that, like that this is how everything is like, but it's just the fact that there are places here that get this bad. I mean, whenever I've been driving through Oakland, I have seen a lot of this, just huge mass tents on the side of the streets, people shitting on the sides of the roads. It's out of control, honestly. But the ghetto, like I said, it's not everything. There are some nice parts like Oakland Hills. And then in terms of jobs and economy, it's not that good. In Oakland, the average person also makes around, like, I believe, $40,000. And there are not a lot of jobs that, like, are going to be based in Oakland. Things to do in Oakland, it's also pretty boring. I mean, you might have like a few concerts or whatever, but there's really not much of like a big nightlife there. And I'd say people in the Bay Area are generally way more introverted in general than people in Southern California. So it's not like you're really going to find a lot of people to party with you anyways. And so in terms of things to do, I'm giving it a 4 out of 10. Cost, it actually is pretty good. So here you can find houses that on average are going to cost 700 grand. Honestly, a lot of Oakland does look pretty crime riddled. There's a lot of graffiti in a lot of places, which I don't mind personally, but I know a lot of people don't like graffiti. Overall, Oakland, California would be a 3 out of 10, and I'm gonna have to put it under, like, honestly, I'm gonna have to put it under pretty horrible choice, just because it's gotten so dangerous over the last few years. First of all, in terms of ghetto, yes, San Francisco does have a homelessness problem, but it's not the way everyone will make it seem, where people make it seem as though, like, in every single street corner there's gonna be some homeless person shitting on the street. It's not like that all the time. You can go to San Francisco and not encounter a homeless person. That's happened to me before. Now, jobs and economy, this is where San Francisco really shines, probably more than any other city. San Francisco has all of the big tech jobs that you're probably thinking of when you think of California, Silicon Valley, all of that. The average person in San Francisco is bringing in roughly $130,000 a year. And so that would be a combined household income of at least $250K. That is a lot of money. Like, the average person making that much money, the $130,000 a year, is almost double the national average. And overall, like, that's what people mean when they say California salaries. So there's definitely a great job and economy sector. I would say a 10 out of 10 in terms of jobs and economy. You really can't get much better than that. And then in terms of things to do, I'm not sure how to say this in a way that makes sense. I would say San Francisco does have a lot of things to do. Like, it's really diverse. You can visit a lot of different restaurants. You can go to a lot of cool museums, science museums, exploratoriums, art museums. You can see the San Francisco Nutcracker and take one of these tour buses. It's definitely a place where you can visit and see a lot of cool things, but in terms of the people or building a community and actually having friends there or, like, going out and things like that, I'd say it's pretty hard to do that in San Francisco, or at least in the Bay Area in general. It's not really like LA, where you just you go out and you just like meet people and socialize a lot. I'd say that a lot of San Franciscans are, like, pretty withdrawn or introverted. So while there are a lot of fun things to do, I'd say it still feels like I'd still think some people who are young would maybe not like it that much, because generally young people like to, I feel like, hang out with other people more and party and stuff like that, which isn't really, like, a thing in San Francisco. There are fun things to do, but maybe it's not for everyone, if that makes sense. So I would give it a 7 out of 10 in terms of things to do, or a 7.5 out of 10, between a 7 and an 8, because there's restaurants, and obviously it's a big city, you're going to find things to do, but it's almost like that's inherent to big cities. So I wouldn't say San Francisco especially is like, oh, there's a million things to do. Now, in terms of cost of living, it is pretty nightmarish in San Francisco. Your average house is going at an average of over over $1 million easily, and the rent is going at around $3,500. It's pretty high, and if you honestly, the rent and cost of living is really high here. I'm going to put San Francisco with a 7 out of 10 as a solid choice to live in. You probably will enjoy living here if you can afford it, and there are definitely worse places that you can be in California. There's a lot of opportunity here, and it's very innovative. This sort of city is where you can find a lot of innovation, stuff like that, so it's pretty good. Not the best, though. And now we're going to move on to our final city. At the top of this list should surprise no one. We can just start off with, first of all, ghetto part. LA does have a slightly higher than average crime rate, but compared to other cities of similar sizes, the crime rate in LA is actually quite low, and because you're driving around in your car all the time, you're usually pretty protected from all of that. And we're going on to cost of living. LA is actually pretty good, especially for a major city. You can easily find places in San Fernando that'll go around $500,000, and I'm not saying that there aren't $1 million houses in LA. There are lots of them, and the rent is probably around $2,500, but that is significantly less than Bay Area rent on average, and for being Los Angeles, it's honestly way lower than a lot of major cities. Next, if we are going on to the niceness of outdoors and prettiness, I think LA is one of the prettiest cities on this list, actually. I mean, you can look around at these palm trees and stuff like that. They're pretty cute, but seriously, the oceans are great. They're not overrated. The weather is always pretty warm, even during the winter, and although they don't have as many hiking trails as the Bay Area, they do still have some. I remember hiking with my cousins up there, like on the pine ones, and especially the ones near the Hollywood sign. They're really absolutely gorgeous and they have great views of the city. So its prettiness is also ranking it pretty high. Now, in terms of jobs and economy, LA probably would not rank as high as San Francisco, but it would still rank pretty high because there are a lot of tech jobs available here just because it is a major city in California. People have moved from New York, I know, and tell me that the tech jobs here in LA were much better, like higher paying and had better benefits. But in terms of like the main type of job, I'd say a lot of people in LA focus on trying to do more entertainment type jobs like singing or acting, being an influencer, a model. It's really great for that type of thing, and you'll definitely find your crowd there if that is the type of career that you would want to go into. Now, lastly, the nightlife in LA is unbeat on here. This is where you go for the nightlife. The bars are open until like 2 a.m., 4 a.m. Like it's really crazy, and this is where all of like people really want to go, I guess, like young people, and like they just like party and have fun pretty much all the time. There is no end of things to do in LA. You can visit Hollywood, you can visit Beverly Hills, like on those little tour bus things, and there are just tons of malls, concerts, things going on around here. Even just going to the beach, you'll find a lot more like friends, or have an easier time finding friends than you would probably in Northern California. In Los Angeles, it is very diverse, and there is just a lot going on in general. You can't really go wrong with LA. You'll never be bored there, and you can never say that there's nothing to do because, well, you're in LA. So, in terms of all of these factors, just it being so beautiful, having the most things to do, not being as expensive as a lot of the places on the list, and having a solid economy, as well as having a pretty low crime rate for being such a big city. LA is the top city on this list. It tops Imogs. It is the best city on this list. Don't fight me on this. Fight with the wall. Thank you.